In Canada, he's a god. In Boston, he's a living saint. But what history records is the simple truth. He swept into the league at a very high speed, and by means of his athletic genius, revolutionized the game. By crossing the blue line, he became the link between Gordie Howe and Wayne Gretzky. Ladies and gentlemen, number 4, Bobby Orr.
Here comes Orr, busting in, one hit, a fantastic goal!
Even during the frigid winter when you're outside playing pond hockey, no socks, you know, because Bobby Orr said no socks.
Stolen by Orr, just took it off his stick. How does he do it? I don't know.
My life's a disappointment because I didn't turn out to be the next Bobby Orr. I felt like Bobby Orr was Wayne Gretzky and everyone else all rolled into one.
What a stop by Bobby Orr! You've never seen anything like that.
His head was always down, his eyes were always down. Very self-conscious and unsure of himself off the ice. And the minute you put him on the ice, he just took over the game.
I remember that when I had breakfast in the coffee shop that first morning that I was there, the waitress and everybody seemed to understand that the stranger from the United States was there because of Bobby Orr. Probably nothing had ever happened in Parry Sound until Bobby Orr started playing hockey.
Our icon was Bobby Orr. He was the one that was taking the mantle of Parry Sound, putting Parry Sound on the map.
When Bobby Orr was born on the banks of Parry Sound in 1948, they say he already knew how to skate.
He was just a little fella, and we just give him a stick and a puck and let him go.
I can remember we were kids, we'd go out and we'd skate in what they call a big sound. Everyone sort of went with the flow. When he went with the puck, you went with him, and he'd pass the puck or score.
We had a lot of kids playing hockey, and we only had one rink, so we had to wait our turns to get inside to play. So we had 10 or 12 or 15 on each team, drop the puck, and away you go. And that's really how we developed our skills.
Instantly proving himself a hockey prodigy, Orr joined the Parry Sound Shamrocks at age 11. And under the tutelage of local hockey guru Bucko McDonald, he flourished.
He was playing with players that were 3 and 4 years older than him, and he was standing out above them.
Just from the first few times you saw him play, you knew this guy was different from everybody else.
When Bobby was 12, 2 Bruin scouts watched him in a Bantam League tournament in rural Ontario.
When they first discovered him, he was 5'3", 5'4", so that he was not preeminent physically. It was just that he had this obvious, extraordinary talent, this amazing gift from God.
I said to him, Bucko, who is that kid number 2 in your team? He said, Ren, his name is Robert Gordon Orr. I spent 2 years romancing, I guess is probably the right word, Bobby and his family.
The romancing was less than extravagant. A free stucco job on the Orr residence and $2,800 in cash bought Bobby's signature on a Bruin contract. Now the prodigy was a pro.
That's when everybody first started to say, who is this youngster? What makes him so good that they'd take him at 14 years old and plunk him against 18, 19, 20-year-olds?
An all-star in each of 4 seasons with the Oshawa Generals, Orr was prevented by NHL rules from joining the Bruins until he was 18. Meanwhile, Boston fans wept and waited as the Bruins finished in the cellar 3 of those 4 years.
He was the phenom. He was the future of the Boston Bruins, and we all heard about it.
I had heard about him from the Boston writers covering the Celtics for years. Bobby Orr is going to save the Bruins.
These various John the Baptists, if you will, were coming to Boston. There's this savior coming.
When Bobby finally landed in Boston in 1966, the long wait seemed worth it.
He was, without a doubt, the best player on the ice in the very first game he ever played.
They all tested Orr. Orr came in when there were only 6 teams. And it was tough to make the league, and everybody tried you on for size, particularly rookies.
If somebody asked for it, he gave it to him. And he didn't have to take any back seat as far as throwing his dukes around.
Tough, fast, and talented on the ice, the quiet boy from Parry Sound shunned the night world of fame and celebrity.
Orr was somewhat embarrassed, introverted, to the point where he'd hang out in the trainer's room.
We'd go to a restaurant to eat, and he was so shy that if he noticed somebody looking at him, it was, pay the bill, let's go have room service.
I didn't want to go out. I just wanted to kind of hide in my room.
I said, Bobby, lighten up. Enjoy life. The best hockey player in the world. Enjoy it. You know? And he said, oh, no, you can't do that.
Bobby Orr was on a mission, and his mission was to take the Boston Bruins out of the doldrums, out of the basement, and try and win them a Stanley Cup.
Although he won NHL Rookie of the Year, Orr didn't lift Boston out of last place, much less get them a shot at the Stanley Cup. But make no mistake, the Messiah had arrived. The future was secure.
Sports Century's 50 Greatest Athletes is presented by the Force Player.
Now, Bobby Orr, I'm told that you are the highest paid 22-year-old Canadian in the history of this country. Is this true?
Well, I'm very happy with what I make.
He could get from point A to point B faster than anybody else. Never could.
I always said he had 18 speeds of forward and no reverse.
I had the puck a lot, and that's a pretty good defense when you have the puck, because they've got to get it from you.
When I'm
You always waited for the moment when he got the puck behind his own net, and you could see him looking and scanning, and there were those 5 players in front of their goaltender, and you knew none of them was going to stop him.
From his wheelhouse behind the net, Bobby Orr defied the gods of hockey, daring to cross the blue line and attack the net.
Defensemen never rushed the puck past center. Defensemen never went into the opposition end. They always stayed in their point, and they played defense.
You're told get the puck up to a forward as soon as you can and just follow up behind. But don't take any chances at all.
Why would well-conditioned, good athletes playing defense basically stop playing once they hit the center line? Why wouldn't they press forward? And Bobby Orr was that transitional player. He was good enough, strong enough, quick enough, talented enough that he could be part of the offensive rush and still get back to defend.
He was like a tiger on defense. He could hit, but nobody did it with as much force and as much flair and as often as Bobby Orr did.
After 4 seasons, Bobby Orr led the Bruins to the Stanley Cup Finals and won back the hearts of Bostonians, who hadn't seen a championship since 1941.
He used to just drop into hospitals. We'd be driving by one, he'd drop. He'd say, hey, we got an hour. We'll go see some kids.
These kids would look up, they'd be in bed, they'd have their little teddy bears and stuffed animals with them. They'd look up, oh, Bobby Orr. They'd all get something.
Everybody wanted their kid to be Bobby Orr. You never saw so many hockey rinks. When I was growing up, there was one hockey rink in the city.
They started building rinks in every neighborhood, you know. It was like 2 rinks in every neighborhood. Everybody was playing hockey. Basketball didn't exist when I was growing up. And the Celtics at that time won 11 championships out of 13 years. They were still struggling to fill the seats, and they were second on those sports pages once Bobby Orr arrived in 1966.
Orr attracted thousands, millions of non-hockey fans. Women could watch it. Hey, look at that handsome kid, right? Look at him go. Didn't have to understand the game. Didn't have to know what a blue line was.
In Game 4, Boston was on the verge of sweeping St. Louis when Orr forever rocked the Garden.
May 10, 1970, nobody that was in New England that day will ever forget.
Sudden death overtime between 2 fine hockey teams, the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues.
A typical Bobby Orr determined play to do it to win the Stanley Cup.
Westfall rolled it in front. Sanderson tried a shot that was wide, and Keenan cleared it but not out.
I knew he was going to come to the net. because he was coming in on an angle that he always came in on, that if he didn't get it, he was gone and in defensive position.
If the puck had been knocked by me, we might have had a problem there. Probably would have been a 2-on-1.
Bobby Orr behind the net to Sanderson. Orr! Bobby Orr scores, and the Boston Bruins have won the Stanley Cup.
It wasn't the greatest goal that was ever scored. It was the fourth game of a four-game sweep in a one-sided playoff series. It was the greatest picture ever taken.
And we reenacted that 1,000 million times, you know. Somebody would have to, okay, you trip me, I'm Bobby Orr, I go up, I'll put my hands like this.
In that 1970 championship season, Orr earned the distinction of being the only player to win all 4 major awards: MVP, Best Defenseman, Playoff MVP, and the scoring title. 2 years later, Orr led the Bruins back to the Stanley Cup Finals to face the New York Rangers.
You had the natural Red Sox-Yankee rivalry. So you had this real Boston-New York hate.
Everybody was even, except for that one player, Bobby Orr.
Bad man Sather out. Orr holds, spins away from McGregor to Busick, and he scores!
Where did he go? You know, and it's a move that nobody had ever seen, and he originated it.
Orr keeps it in the blue line. Orr moves away from McGregor with a beautiful move. Shot, score!
We gotta have you stand right over here in case you don't know what it is.
The Stanley Cup with Bobby Orr.
That's what it's all about.
Winning his second playoff MVP, Bobby Orr was hailed the best defenseman of all time. From his perch atop the hockey world, he couldn't see the injuries and financial treachery that lay ahead.
5 big fights, 1 explosive night.
If you don't want to hit or be hit, then you should be playing this game.
Orr underwent a third operation on his left knee following the 1972 Stanley Cup. Yet he continued to play with that same reckless abandon.
He put himself in spots and took hits that most other players would have bailed out on.
You can't go up to Bobby and say, Bobby, take it easy, don't carry the puck. That's insane.
Oh, he's hauled down by Barrett in for Busick.
He crashed, he went through holes, he forced holes, and ergo, the knees.
He was in pain constantly, but can you imagine if he had 2 good knees, how he would have been?
We all were robbed of a lot of good hockey by Bobby Orr simply because his knees just gave out and couldn't take it anymore.
When he missed 15 games of the 1973 season, his teammates began to wonder if the end was near.
He had no cartilage left to protect, and it was just bone rubbing against bone.
Take him up over here, they use the same scar. Up over here a couple times.
You could never discuss it with him about pain or leg, or he didn't want to hear it. He just wanted to play.
Toughness isn't always fighting or body checking or nothing like that. It's the guy who tapes his leg up and goes out and plays when he shouldn't, and is the best player, like Orr was.
Orr played on and took Boston to the 1974 Stanley Cup Finals. A year later, he won his 2nd scoring title and his 8th straight Norris Trophy. But the damage was mounting. And in 1976, Orr played only 10 games. Bruin management saw the writing on the wall.
The Bruins had expressed an opinion that he didn't have many games left to play. And I think that hurt Bobby to hear that.
Unable to reach an agreement with the Bruins, Orr was a free agent. After a decade in Boston, he signed a 5-year, $3 million contract with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Now the fans of Boston are picking on the Bruins for getting rid of Bobby, who was their favorite son. You meet people now who say, I haven't gone to a game since Orr left.
The end was slow and painful. Playing in only 26 games in 3 seasons, Bobby Orr finally called it a day in November 1978.
When Bobby Orr came to Chicago, he figured that his knee would carry him at least 50% of what he had done in Boston, but it didn't even carry him 10%.
He was so frustrated. Here's a guy with probably one of the most talented players, if not the most, that ever played, and he couldn't do it.
I am officially retiring as a player in the greatest league in the world. I'm disappointed, but I am relieved. I would not want to go through the rest of my life thinking, well, maybe there was that chance. I now know I'm no longer able to play.
A 3-time MVP, 8 times an All-Star, the bona fide commercial superstar should have been in great financial shape. But Orr had been blindsided by his agent and friend, Alan Eagleson.
Bobby Orr, you have to understand, wanted absolutely nothing to do with anything that wasn't hockey-oriented. And so Alan Eagleson did that for him.
Eagleson promised him he'd be a millionaire by the time he was 28.
All his business and financial affairs, endorsements, were strictly Al Eagleson's department.
Not only had Orr been misled in his financial affairs, he was shocked to learn that a golden opportunity back in Boston had been kept from him.
Bobby Orr had a chance to own part of the Boston Bruins, to own a major league franchise. And Eagleson didn't tell him that.
So I went and saw Bobby. I said, you know, why did you turn that deal down? So I don't turn any deal down. Uh-oh.
When I saw the letter that our Alan Eagleson wrote declining on behalf of Bobby Orr ownership of 18.5% of the Bruins, I was dumbfounded.
I wasn't paying attention, and you know, some things that maybe I should have been informed about. I was not.
Eagleson cost his top client millions, but had ever more to answer for after masterminding a scheme to defraud his own union of pension and health benefits.
Bobby Orr literally made him, because then he became the agent for many other players.
What you had here was a lawyer who was an agent that represented as many as 150 players at one time, who ended up being the head of the union boss, the international hockey czar. Take this hat off, put that hat on. It was a hat trick.
We thought he was a god. We thought he was the greatest thing in the world to happen to us. That's how stupid we were. He kept telling us that you guys got the best pension plan in the world. Our pension plan's a joke.
If you look at what he did to the players that he was supposedly representing, the only inference you can draw is that this is the biggest fraud in the history of the sports industry.
The prominent person he became, he can know it all to Bobby Orr, and he treated Bobby Orr, you know, as a disposable napkin.
With Orr present in a Boston courtroom, Eagleson pled guilty to fraud in 1998. He would serve 6 months in a Canadian jail and was pressured to resign from the Hockey Hall of Fame. As for Orr, he returned to his adoptive home of Boston and rebuilt his career as a businessman and spokesman.
The life of a retired hockey player is a tough one.
Your lunch, Mr. Orr.
There's never a moment's peace.
For all of his post-hockey success, Bobby Orr will forever be scarred by what Alan Eagleson did to him.
On the subject of Al Eagleson, I mean, his jaw would clench and he would tense up you could just feel the betrayal.
He was embarrassed. I mean, he recommended him to a lot of people, but he gets snuck into, you see.
I have a mother.
Gordie Howe and Wayne Gretzky measure up Bobby Orr.
Sports Century's 50 Greatest Athletes is presented by the Wide Track Grand Prix by Pontiac. Wider is better. Also brought to you by Bud Light. For the great taste that won't fill you up and never lets you down, make it a Bud Light. By Lincoln Financial Group. Clear solutions in a complex world. And by Burger King, where you can have the delicious king of fries. Burger King, when you have it your way, it just tastes better.
For centuries. Why did Larry Bird, during the national anthems, look up at the Boston Garden ceiling? No one knew. Until a night in 1988, when at a dinner, Larry Bird explained to an audience, which included Bobby Orr, that what he was doing was looking at Bobby Orr's retired number 4.
And when he said that, I'll never forget, Bobby was sitting next to me. He reached over and he just unconsciously grabbed my arm and said, "Oh my God."
Every time I looked up, I always seen the vision of him flying across the ice after he scored a goal. So everybody has their ways of getting motivated, and Bobby always motivated me.
It is that sort of respect that has put Bobby Orr in Boston's pantheon of sports legends.
A local TV station had Williams, Bird, and Orr together, side by side for a panel show. Ted was driven by his son. Larry came in a limo, and Bobby drove himself, you know? And that's, you know, he is and was a man of the people.
Orr created the venue for all the Boston Bruin players to be hugely popular. He was the Boston Bruins.
At the closing of the hallowed Boston Garden in 1995, hockey fans got the chance to thank Bobby Orr one more time.
Number 4, Bobby Orr.
Everybody's compared to Bobby Orr now. Oh, he's another Orr. He's another Orr. There never will be another Orr.
That was the biggest note I remember in hockey. Coach after coach after coach telling us, you know, pass the puck. You're not Bobby Orr. Nobody's Bobby Orr. There's one Bobby Orr.
So then you have Dennis Potvin coming into the league, Paul Coffey coming into the league, you have Ray Bourque coming into the league. Now these guys are getting 20, 30 goals, 70, 80, 90 points. None of that happened without Bobby Orr the way he played.
Being put on the defense made him master of the chessboard, and we all learned from that.
Bobby was the man that paved the road for us. Gave us some freedom anyway, gave us a chance to express ourselves as players.
When you see that when you're a kid, kind of gives you the, not the green light, but that, hey, there's something more than just defense.
If there is a player that comes along that's just as great or greater than Bobby Orr, I hope the good Lord sees fit to keep me on this earth to see him, because he will be something special.
By pioneering a new kind of hockey player, Bobby Orr is mentioned in the same reverence as two other immortals.
Bobby Orr, without question, changed the game of hockey maybe more than any player ever did.
I would say I've never seen a guy who dominated both offensively and defensively as much as that young man did.
I like to call them the hockey trinity. Gretzky being the son, Howe being the father, and Bobby Orr like the Holy Ghost, because he was truly amazing.
Injury, followed by treachery, ended Bobby Orr's career all too soon. Although he can't rewrite his story, he took a step towards ensuring that no other hockey prodigy from rural Canada gets fleeced. Bobby Orr became a player's agent in 1996. We will see you next week when the 50 greatest athletes of the 20th century continues its countdown.